Well, we're back here, Shannon, aren't we?
We are. You're back in the U.S.
I'm back in the U.S. Yeah, I left the country to do some musical tourism, which
I like that.
Is such a fantastic business model. Unless you're me and you're just paying like a customer. So I went to see the band Fish played in Mexico for 4 nights this past weekend, and my wife and I went down and saw it. But the way it works, they've done this now 4 times. We've been 3 of the 4. The first 3 were they were all at one resort, the first 3, and now they've moved, and it looks like the next 4 at least will be at a new resort, which is where we were this weekend, right near Cancun Airport, right like 10 minutes away, which was great. The other resort was like an hour away. So this one, nicer resort. But what they do is they set up a stage on the beach. About 5,000 people can fit on the beach on the stage. And what this company does, there's a company that organizes this, not just for Fish. They do it for 3 other bands as well. Fish was the last of them this time. I think Fish was the first band they ever did this with, 5 years ago or 6 years ago. But okay, now they've expanded their model as they should. They've scaled, right? Nice. And they do it with bands where people will want to see the same band multiple nights in a row. So it was obviously they did Fish this weekend. They started their run. I believe they started it with Dead and Company, which is the current incarnation of Grateful Dead members.
Yes.
Luke Bryan, the country singer.
Okay.
And he has usually Luke Bryan's weekend, I think, has other acts with him. It's not just one act.
That would make sense. Yeah.
And then Dave Matthews and Tim Reynolds. It's just the 2 of them. They play sort of acoustic. It's just the 2 guitar players. They did 3 or 4 nights, and then Fish did 4 nights this weekend. And the way
let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
Do they have this Fish in this case have enough of a catalog? They play different things every night or the same?
No. So Fish's catalog is expansive enough that almost 3 years ago, they did 13 nights at Madison Square Garden and didn't repeat a song through the entire 13-night run. I know.
That's some creativity right there.
It is,
wow,
yeah.
That's cool.
That's cool. But it's so that's their business model, right? Is they know that people are going to go to multiple shows because you want to, hear different songs. And so they've always been really smart about keeping their ticket prices relatively low compared to the rest of the industry. Their tickets still aren't more than $100 usually. Like it's usually less than $100 a ticket for a normal concert. I'm not talking about this past weekend which I will.
Sure.
But for a normal concert, it took them a very long time to move above the $50 mark. They were very hesitant for that because they knew that, they have a smaller following, but people will pay to go to multiple shows. And so they know that you can't put your tickets at $250 and expect people to go to 5 shows.
Right,
that
right.
Suddenly becomes a financial burden for most people. But they know that if their tickets are $70, $80 kind of thing, like okay, we can just roll forward and they do just fine. At least as far as they're concerned. So this company though, CID Entertainment, started this thing on the beach with Fish, I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago or something. And they also are the company that helps bands manage their festivals and other sort of destination style things. If a band is playing 3 or 4 nights or even 2 or 3 nights in one area, they might say, oh, look, we'll get you tickets and a hotel room and transportation to the venue. They do the package deal, right?
Okay, right.
So the idea of doing a package deal at an all-inclusive resort, it fits into this model. But what they do is the first year we went, I did the math that no one should ever do. After we bought our tickets, I didn't finalize the booking, but I went on the website of the resort and I booked the exact same room for the same nights. Yeah. Oh yeah. And it was like a third of what we were paying through CID to see Fish. Now, if I bought a room direct with the resort, I cannot go down to the beach and see the concerts, right? Like in order to see the concerts, you have to book through the package, yeah. Right? And I mean, and that's just how it works. Now, I dug in a little deeper this weekend and I found out the way the way they do it, which makes perfect sense, is that CID goes and pre-buys all the rooms that they're going to want to sell, alongside the concert tickets well in advance. Like, I think they bought this year's and next year's rooms like 8 months ago. So
they're taking on the risk. Right?
They're taking on the risk, but they know what they're going to sell, right?
Yeah.
As long as everybody's, as long as the band's still alive and all that stuff, like that would be the biggest risk, because they know that the following's there. They've done this before. They know that people are going to come. But if I'm able to buy one room at a third the price that they're selling it to me, imagine the price that they're getting when they're buying 1,500 rooms.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. That's pretty good. That's pretty cool.
They do have to go and like build a stage and put all the infrastructure in place for that. And of course, pay the bands. And I'm sure that's no small fee. Right. But there's still a lot of money on the table, which is great. I mean,
you have to you have to buy the tickets to them to go to this event.
Correct.
You can't just buy a ticket. You have to stay at the resort.
Correct. You have to stay at the resort. You have to buy the tickets through them. That's right.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's cool. We should try to get them on the show and talk about it.
Yeah, I would love to, because it's a great model, and they're a relatively small company that's just kind of built things up, and they really are. I mean, I haven't talked with them about this. As you said, I would love to, but on my side, they are masters at customer service, which of course is the key to anything like this. Great. I mean, if you're going to do an all-inclusive thing that's going to cost, it cost us like $6,000 for the weekend or whatever it was. If you're going to charge somebody that, you got to deliver, and it's got to be. You
get your airfare through them too. It's like a complete package, or you just get there any way you can.
You get there, you get to the airport any way you can. And then from there, they shuttle you to the venue. Everything's included, all your room, the concert ticket, the food, the drinks, everything. It's an all-inclusive weekend. And it was 5 nights for us. And then they ship you back to the airport, and then you're on your own to get a flight home, which hopefully you've already booked, by that point.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very cool. That's a
but
good
it was
concept.
interesting traveling because, with this coronavirus thing, I started to wonder, like, will they cancel this? Because a week and a half before there was a big trade show that was supposed to be in Barcelona this week.
Mobile World Congress. Mobile World Congress, yeah.
109,000 people went to that show last year. And 2 weeks ago today, they canceled this year's show. Imagine flights, hotels you could cancel, but all those hotels are screwed, right? Their business is screwed. The airlines were somewhat protected, probably, because if people bought non-refundable tickets, but still, man.
That's pretty interesting. Yeah, it's fascinating. And I was thinking about it, that same thing this week. And I thought, what a great topic for us to discuss on the show today is what to do when disaster strikes like this. How do you respond? What do you do if you were in the business of providing something to that show that was canceled? And how do you deal with
what if you were going to release your product at this show?
Yeah, certainly there must have been people that had that plan. What do you do? Let's take the next 20, 30 minutes and go down that road and talk about it.
Well, let's do it. He's Shannon Jean. I'm Dave Hamilton. And this is episode 264 of the Small Business Show. Welcome to the Small Business Show, everybody. You know why we're here, because we just told you it's time to talk about what to do when disaster strikes.
Yeah, we did a show about disasters back in 2015.
Yeah.
If you go to businessshow.co and search for disaster, it'll come right up. And those were more kind of man-made disasters. I fondly recall discussing breaking up the first and only fist fight that happened in our lab on a couple technicians. It was pretty crazy. But today I thought, let's talk about natural disasters and resources and recovery. What do you do? How do you respond? How do you manage your team, your business, your suppliers, your customers when something happens like the coronavirus that we were just talking about. I'm not really sure what's going to happen with this, other than, we've seen the stock market, take a big dive under concerns of, I think, primarily economics. Because even though I think no one is sure how big this is going to be, certainly even at the size it is now, it's having an economic impact. Right.
Oh, for sure. Well, yeah. I mean, the impact of China, I think that was the big deal with Mobile World Congress, because the day before they announced that the whole show had been canceled, I think it was Sony and Amazon had both pulled out, saying,
right.
Yeah, look, we've got lots of people coming from China to this show that either can't come or it's not wise to bring them. And so we're not going to be there. And I think there was probably signs that there were more companies like that were going to have to make the same decision. And my guess is the organizers of Mobile World Congress looked at it and said, look, if we go from 109,000 attendees in 2019 to 40,000 attendees in 2020, that's bad optics. Way better.
That's a bad look. Yeah.
It's a bad look. Yeah. You just gotta punt. But so much of the mobile phone business, which is really what Mobile World Congress is focused on, comes from Asia. I mean, even though it happens in Barcelona, Asia is the center of all that stuff. So it made sense that, that they had to sort of pull the plug again, if only from a PR standpoint, just to not have a show that was so weakly attended. Easier to have zero and say, we'll see you next year. But it screws all those companies that were going to make those announcements. Oh, yeah.
Hundreds and hundreds and thousands of people. And I think that one of the things that disasters, or emergency situations do really well is they surface the weaknesses in your business. Right. And I think you hit on it right there, where if, you're sourcing or having your products assembled or, created in China right now, you're going to be constrained on, depending upon what's going on.
Oh, yeah.
And I would imagine that there's a lot of companies right now scrambling. I know that if, I was still running our, repair business and, my general manager that was in Shenzhen and we were sourcing all over, I think it would be a bit challenging right now. And I think that's where, I want to talk about today is how do you prepare for things that may come up, and what can you do to help mitigate, some of those risks?
Yeah. The things you can't control. That's right.
Right.
Yeah. But you've got to be able to control your business even in those things. So yeah, I like that we're heading down this path. The first thing I want to talk about, though, is our sponsor for this episode, which is TextExpander at textexpander.com/podcast. One thing that you can do to help mitigate against disasters is to make sure that your productivity and efficiency in your business are at peak levels, because you don't want to be bogged down by other things when this surprise shows up of a disaster, right? And so TextExpander can really help with this, because what TextExpander allows you to do with your business is you take all of the things that you're emailing out or sending to customers via text message or whatever those are, and you craft them once, and then you put them into TextExpander. And the next time you need to send that same response, it's already there. You don't have to proofread it. You don't have to think about it. You just send it. You can even have TextExpander prompt you for fill-ins, like if you want to put the person's name or their product name or some other thing that you want to be able to customize these. It can prompt you for these, so you don't have to remember, oh, right, after I fill this, I've got to go back and edit this part. No. TextExpander takes care of that for you, and it's awesome. Check it out, and you can sync with your entire team so everybody gets the same thing. And even if a disaster does strike, right, you can sit down once, write whatever note you need to write that goes to your customers explaining, in your example, maybe some delays on some things. Write it once, craft it, have the whole team, or whoever needs to look at it, and now put it into TextExpander, and boom, your whole team has it. You're good to go. Make sure to visit textexpander.com/podcast, because as a listener of this show, you get 20% off your first year. So check it out, textexpander.com/podcast. And our thanks to TextExpander and Smile for sponsoring this episode.
Awesome. These guys are great. Yeah. So I'm doing some research here for the show today, looking up on the Small Business Administration website, SBA.gov. They had one of the things that really hit me when I was doing some research here is, according to the SBA, over 25% of small businesses don't open again after a major disaster happens. And in a lot of cases, they're using like flooding and, earthquake, different things like that.
Sure.
But I think that, if in this age of just-in-time inventory and, keeping things, your supply chain moving, when that comes to a halt, you could really have some problems. And I was impressed. The SBA had some really cool tips for prepping, and they also offer some really great resources if you do run into problems, everything from, loans to, other assistance. And we'll put some, I'm not going to go into all of them because it's pretty in depth, but we will put the links in the show notes for you at businessshow.co.
Cool.
Put them up there.
Yep.
Yeah. And I think a lot of this comes down to being prepared. And I keep coming back to the supply chain concept and, thinking about, okay, if I'm sourcing all of my products through one channel, one geographical location, what weaknesses come up if all of a sudden I can't get that product? And thinking about how can I diversify that, your supply chain, to take it, one source starts to fall off, can you shift to somewhere else? And if you can't, that's a real weakness in your business. And I guarantee you, if you ever go to sell your company, or you're getting analyzed, you're trying to raise funding, or get a loan from your bank, they're going to look for those kinds of weaknesses, and they will be glad to point them out for you.
Yeah. It's interesting. Diversify was the first thing I put on my list too. And I approach it from a very different perspective, because I have never been in that business, but I am in the publishing business. And we always have to think about, like, we're often writing things about the news of the day. Well, a natural disaster or any kind of change can cause no relevant news to come up.
Right.
And so we always have to be ready. And this is why we years ago diversified into things like tips and reviews, how-tos.
Oh, that's great.
Right? Like, diversifying.
So you're not just relying on the news.
No,
right?
These are things we can control too. Like, I know that I can write, we've got 25 tips in the queue that need to be written. No, we won't write them all in one day, but we know that we can. And so we can start pulling from that and be like, okay, we can do some different things. We can provide ongoing value that's irrelevant to whatever the happenings or not happenings of the day
that's
are.
Great.
Yeah.
That is, what a great way to prepare for a weakness, right? Because you can't control the news.
No.
Right. But you can prep and expand your business model to provide other services over time. And then you're not just relying on that one stream of data that you have to wait for.
And that's it. Yeah. You hit the nail on the head. Like, just zoom out and diversify your business model. I think you had a note that 25% of businesses fail after a major disaster. So assume that 25% of your business is going to fail. So make sure you have multiple business, we always talk about your revenue stack, having multiple faucets dripping constantly. One of them's going to dry up. Fine. Okay, great. Go after the others. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. And again, you don't, you and I are famous for having very different types of businesses in our revenue stack. That's not the only way to do it. You can, as I said, even in one business, you can diversify yourself so that you're protected against these things, for sure.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
And I also think on that same diversification concept, one of the things that hit me over the years is you need to have multiple ways to communicate with your people, especially if you're located in different parts of the world. If Skype is your go-to, well, you need to come up with a backup, right? A plan B. If Skype goes down, or we like I said, I've done a lot of business in China, and certain times, hey, Skype isn't being allowed right now, so we would have to jump over to WhatsApp, and forget certain kinds of services that just weren't being offered. So you have to be ready for those. You have to prepare, because you don't want to try to contact your team in one day and just be like, oh, we can't reach them. I mean, you're dead in the water. So you got to have some backup, and you have to discuss this and come up part of your disaster plan, if you will. Everybody needs to talk about, okay, if we're not able to reach you this way, we're going to, come down this way. It's like going someplace with your kids, like at Disneyland, and telling them, if you get separated, meet back here.
Yeah. Right. That's it. Yeah.
It
exactly.
sounds funny, but it's important to know that you've got a backup plan in place. If you can't reach the people that are supporting your business, right?
Well, and it follows into diversification, but virtualizing, if your business is virtualized, that helps protect you against disasters too. We've had issues where, there was one day, I think it was last year, maybe it was 2 years ago, where the entire state of California, the entire Comcast connection to the state of California was flaky. And so all of our people that, worked on the West Coast couldn't get any publishing done for the day. I mean, it was a big mess. And it was like, okay, well, the people in Colorado and the people, in London, it's no problem. Like, they can publish. We've got things going. Now, you can't you can't virtualize your business, in a heartbeat like that. That takes a little more planning. And for some businesses, it just doesn't work. But it can.
Yeah, it can. And also, to recognize that as a strength of your business is an important part of your story when you're talking to people about, or if if you're in discussions to raise money or be acquired, that's a real strength. And again, these kind of disasters, if you're planning for them, and it helps keep you healthy, if you will, and it can make you stronger. And you think about, what are our strengths? What are our weaknesses? What if this goes, I knew a couple of brothers that were in the garage door business. These guys are wildly successful out here, and they own a couple of buildings. And the one brother, who's very conservative, says, well, what could happen that we haven't thought about? And he's like, well, man, if we have an earthquake out here, and earthquake insurance is crazy expensive in California, but they calculated out, well, it's only this much. It was pennies per square foot to add earthquake insurance to their buildings, and it made their business that much stronger, right? They didn't have to worry about it. So looking at those things, and diversification too, is keeping on this supplier concept. What about size of your suppliers, right? Are you dealing with smaller entities that are going to be impacted in a greater way versus, larger corporations that have different diverse supply chains to get you products you need? And maybe you should have both, right? Because they're going to react differently to these kind of crises. Like if you're buying from a very large organization, let's say you're sourcing parts for iPhones, which is in my wheelhouse. There's awesome deals, awesome opportunities from some of the smaller guys, but these larger entities that keep some of their stock here in the US and can supply you faster, well, they're going to have a depth of inventory to help you out that maybe you wouldn't find if you only were buying from the smaller ones.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And then lastly, I think, political, right? But what's the political climate in countries that you're buying from? I think about that more and more now as we see different things happen with, whether you're buying from China or you're in India or doing things. You need to think about what's going on and how you would react if things maybe get a little squirrely. Could it impact your business? Good to think about.
Yeah, it's great. And, one thing that I always kind of think about is having cash on hand.
Absolutely.
Because you can get creative very quickly if you can afford to spend a little money to create something new, right? Like, okay, here we are. I could take our publishing business. Like, all right, great. We have internet problems. Everybody needs to move to, using cell phones. and streaming over that. Okay, well, that's going to cost extra. Well, fine, we've got the cash. Go ahead and do it. Or we need to spin up another server on the other coast. This isn't going to work. We've got to have both. Okay, that's going to take some cash. Like, just go ahead and do it. Or access to cash. Credit cards and lines of credit, those sorts of things. But the ability to spend cash, I guess, is the right. You don't necessarily need to keep cash on hand, but the ability to spend it in a pinch is huge, because you can say, okay, this isn't working, but we can now sort of innovate ourselves out of this problem because we have the ability to spend some money and do a few things that maybe our competitors aren't thinking about doing because they're looking to fix the problem that isn't ours to fix. All these things that you've talked about, earthquake. I can't prevent Mother Nature. I also can't influence politics. My businesses aren't big enough to do that. So I got to kind of let those people do what they're going to do, and I got to figure out my life around that. I got to route around the damage. And sometimes it just takes some cash to do that, including just getting on a plane and going somewhere. Like, okay, this isn't working. Let's get everybody into, let's all fly to Austin. Let's get to Texas. Everybody's there. That's where, we're having problems in California. We're having problems here, whatever. Get everybody out. Let's go there. Now we can keep running the business. Whereas,
that's
right. Those are the kinds
really
of things.
Important. And the key thing I think too about that cash flow is the time to be trying to increase your if access to cash is not during the crisis, right?
No.
You need to be, this is part of your disaster plan, is you need to be borrowing or setting up access, even if you don't tap into those lines of credit or credit card, whatever you're going to do, when you don't need it. Okay. You need to plan in advance. You want to put those things in place when you don't need them, have them waiting in the wings, because not only might you need them to survive, but typically disasters, or emergency situations, there's a flip side, and that's opportunity.
Always.
And I would, I know a lot of people, and that back in the 2008, 2009, when the real estate bubble burst and everything went crashing down, there were so many opportunities, but only if you had cash, right? And that's just one example. I mean, if you're use my earlier example of the iPhone repair parts, if you've got access to capital and you see the writing on the wall that supply chains are being constrained, and you can pick up a large order, large shipment, maybe double, triple, exponentially more than you would normally buy, that could be a tremendous opportunity for you in the coming weeks and months if those products are not available for you.
Yeah,
could be really great. You could generate a whole new business as well. Talking about expanding into other areas like your tips and, not relying just on the news, it's other businesses are going to be impacted by these problems. Can you offer supplies or services to them and grow your business when it's tough like this?
Yep.
So I think it's important.
And this is another time where we're talking about a lot of things to insure against disaster crippling your business. But one of those things is buying insurance. I don't usually buy travel insurance, but I did for this past trip. I picked it up. It was right about 2 weeks before we left, just because of the whole coronavirus thing. I thought, I can pick up travel insurance for about $200. I've got whatever, six on the thing, $7,000, whatever, with flights on the line. What? That $2,000, that $200, that's worth it to me. And that way, if anything, if they cancel this whole thing and I got to eat part of it, that'll help me pick it up. And also, if one of us gets sick while we're, there, okay, well, now we've got, $50,000 worth of insurance to get us home in an emergency and this, that, and the other thing. It's like, okay, I feel better about doing this. But
yeah, totally makes sense.
The insurance is a risk game. I mean, it literally is legalized gambling, right? You are spending money that the person with whom you are spending it is gambling that they are not going to have to pay back to you, right? Multiple times. And you're gambling. Who knows what you're gambling? For me, it was peace of mind of, okay, well, yes, I could have. I mean, the money was already spent, so it wasn't like I was ever going to get it back. But if we didn't get to go on the trip, it would have been nice to have the money back and also have this protection of being able to get home if there was a bigger problem.
Sure,
and we need
makes
to
sense.
spend more money, but that's what my part of that gamble is. But you have to know that with insurance that you're gambling. It's a risk reward scenario. That's exactly how it's supposed to work. It's just
right. And it's maybe part of this disaster plan that we're talking about, looking at things where you're looking at, okay, what cash reserves do I have access to? What can I tap into? And also then, what insurance do I have in place to help me get through these things? If something happens to my facility or I can't do business, do you have loss of income insurance that's available? All kinds of things. Right. Definitely want to talk to your insurance agent that, maybe that person's on your personal board of directors, like we've talked about here. And it just, it's all about being prepared. I often get, just grinding things out and always thinking about the top line. How much revenue can I generate? And sometimes you really have to stop and think, okay, well, what if everything goes to hell? I lose my key supplier. I lose this. How am I going to react? It's really helps to make your business put it in a much stronger place. Yeah.
You said to have your insurance agent on your board of advisors. What a smart move. It is really, I've never thought of my insurance agent as one of those people, but he definitely is. He knows my business and my personal life inside and out. Yep. And yes, anything he recommends for me usually comes with the opportunity for him to profit from. That's how that works.
Of course.
But that's fine. Yep. He also knows, I know that this guy's in it for the long haul. So he's not going to recommend something to me that I'm going to, very quickly say, dude, you just tried to screw me. Like, we're done.
That's right.
So I'm not worried about that. But I will probably 2 or 3 times a year have an hour-long conversation with my insurance agent, just kind of talking about business and things. And we talk about his business and my business. It's a very friendly conversation, but it keeps him aware of what's going on in my scenario. And there have been times where, there's many times where we finish that conversation. And it's like, all right, thanks, man. See you. Bye. And there's no suggestion, recommendation. There's no sales pitch. There's no nothing. And every now and then it's like, hey, you could do this way. It's like, oh, I had no idea. So yeah, that's a good person.
It's important. We've recently, and I have a great woman that sits on, my personal board and we own a bit of real estate.
Right.
And out here in California, there is a tendency for homeowners, and we own some vacation rentals where these insurance companies are canceling homeowners on homes that are anywhere near a fire area, right? As you can imagine, you've probably seen on TV where many parts of California that have burned down.
Sure.
So again, I got a phone call and I was trying to shop around and Claire called me up and said, hey, now's not the time to shop because these companies are looking for any reason to drop you in California. So let's sit tight and look again next year. And so again, she's not going to make any money on that, but they're giving you advice. I've known her for years. When we did get bumped on one of our homes, I was able to go back and, look, and she gave us a ton of options and, to get a new homeowner provider.
Wow.
And, it's great. It's important.
No, it's super helpful. Yeah.
Especially when you have more, as you accumulate more assets or as your business becomes more asset heavy, that insurance becomes, really important.
It is. Yeah. When I was younger, I thought, oh, insurance agents, what a scam. I can figure this out.
Exactly.
It's like, I could figure it out, but I don't want to have to spend the time to learn everything they know. Just like with an attorney, we're all relatively smart people. We could learn to be lawyers, but that takes a lot of time.
It does. Yeah. And I would argue that you can always find it cheaper, but there is usually a price to pay when you have a problem, especially when it comes to insurance.
Got it.
And you don't want to wind up having to sue your insurance company to get coverage. I've been in that position and it's just awful. And so you want to have a good relationship with an agent or a broker that can be on your side, often on your side, representing you towards a larger insurance company. It works out really well.
Yeah, and they've done it before, so they know who to call, how to phrase the messaging, how to get things done quickly, as opposed to, all right, now not only are you having a disaster, but now you have to learn the ins and outs of your insurance company's claims process. No, that's the wrong time to do that. Pay somebody else. That's it. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. So one of the last things I want to talk about is, and we mentioned this on the previous disaster show that we did, throughout all this, when things happen or you start to see things happen, one of the key things to be successful is don't freak out. We've talked about stressful situations hundreds of times on the show here. And a critical point about making it through these things is to remain calm, be the leader that your employees need you to be, that your customers want to see, that your suppliers, they want to see you're rock solid. And having a plan in place is going to make you more confident and is going to help you stay calm during these things. It's real important.
That's great advice. Yeah. You need to pretend that you're not freaking out. I think that's
you may have to pretend, of course, but
you'll be freaking out. That's okay. Yeah. Just get through
your inner judge.
Yeah. And then, freak out later when it's over. Like, let the freaking out come out, but, and make it part of your story. Like, of course I was freaking out, but I knew there was no value in perpetuating that. So instead, I dug into our cash reserves. I looked at our insurance. Yeah. I did all the things that we were supposed to do. I got the team to where we needed to be, and we kept getting the work done. Like that's the story you want to tell. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. No, that's great. That's good stuff. So be prepared, take time to, create a disaster plan and go back and listen to this show again. Maybe play it for your management team and pick out some of the things that'll help make your business stronger. Yeah. And even if you don't have a disaster, that's going to help you in the long run.
It will. Right. Yeah. The more prepared you are, even just thinking through these scenarios and knowing, okay, you know what? I could survive that without insurance. I don't need insurance for that. Knowing that, that's the confidence you need when suddenly disaster strikes. And you're like, okay, you know what? I've already thought this through. This is a little different than what I thought through, but here we go. It's fine. We'll make it. Yep. It's good.
Yeah, exactly.
All right,
good
folks.
Stuff. Great talk about.
Yeah, it's good. It is good. Just doing this makes me feel better about things. So there we go. Thanks for listening, folks. Thanks to Smile at TextExpander.com/podcast for sponsoring this episode. Feedback at businessshow.co. We would love to hear from you. See you next time. Keep living that charmed life.